Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you love captivating stories about men transforming into women in unique and fascinating ways, then be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Now, let's jump right into today's tale.
After another hour of increasingly charged conversation, where innocent topics somehow kept circling back to suggestive territory, Kristin finally set her drink down and stood up. The evening had stretched well past the game's end. The bar now half empty, the atmosphere shifting from sports-focused energy to the more intimate vibe of late-night drinking. "I need to run to the bathroom," she said casually, though there was nothing casual about the way her pulse quickened when Daniel's eyes met hers. Daniel nodded, watching her as she grabbed her purse, his gaze thoughtful, appreciative. "I'll be here," he said, the simple statement carrying a weight of promise that made her stomach flip. "Unless you're planning a bathroom window escape to avoid the check." "You caught me," Kristin replied with a laugh. "My master plan? Foiled by your keen detective skills?" "I'm very observant," Daniel remarked with that infuriating half-smile. "It's both a blessing and a curse." But as she turned to walk away, she felt it. His gaze. Following her. Lingering on her. The sensation was almost physical. A warmth between her shoulder blades that gradually lowered. A consciousness of being watched that made her hyper-aware of every step, every movement. Kyle had been the one doing the watching before. Being on the receiving end was an entirely new experience, unsettling and thrilling in equal measure. So, without thinking, she added an extra sway to her step, just to tease him. A deliberate emphasis on the natural hip movement that came with walking in heels. A slight adjustment to her posture that showcased the curve of her back, the shape of her figure in those fitted jeans. And when she glanced back over her shoulder, a move that felt both calculated and instinctive. She caught him smirking, shaking his head slightly, as if to say, "You're trouble." The look in his eyes, heat mixed with amusement, appreciation, tangled with desire, sent a jolt through her system that was impossible to ignore. This wasn't just attraction. This was something more potent, more dangerous. Kristin ducked into the bathroom, closing the door behind her and exhaling heavily. The muffled sounds of the bar faded as she found herself alone in the stark fluorescent lighting of the women's restroom. A jarringly bright reality check after the dim, intimate lighting of their table. She leaned against the counter, gripping the edge tightly as she looked at herself in the mirror. Her cheeks were flushed, partly from the alcohol, but mostly from something else entirely. Her eyes were bright, her hair slightly tousled from running her fingers through it during their conversation. Her lips fuller from the unconscious habit of biting them. When Daniel said something particularly provocative, "What are you doing, Thompson?" she whispered to her reflection. Her heart was pounding. Not the anxious flutter of nervousness, but the heavy thrum of anticipation, of awareness, of desire. Each beat seemed to echo in her ears, a reminder of how very alive and present in this moment she was. Her body was reacting in ways she wasn't prepared for. The heat that pooled low in her stomach when Daniel's voice dropped to that deeper register. The electric tingle that ran up her arm when their hands accidentally brushed, reaching for the same appetizer. The way her breathing changed, became shallower when he leaned in close to make a point. His cologne, something expensive and subtle. Masculine, without being overpowering, briefly enveloping her senses. These were reactions Kyle had never experienced, had never understood from this side. He'd been the one causing such responses, not feeling them. The intensity was overwhelming, disorienting, like suddenly discovering a new color in the spectrum that had always existed but had been invisible until now. And her head was screaming at her to sort this out, because whatever was happening between her and Daniel Carter was becoming something dangerous. Something with momentum, with gravity, with consequences that extended far beyond a flirtatious evening at a sports bar. "He thinks you're Kristin Thompson," she reminded herself, whispering fiercely at her flushed reflection. Not Kyle trapped in Kristin's body. Not a magically transformed man, still figuring out how to navigate the world as a woman. He thinks you're exactly who you appear to be. The deception, unintentional as it was, added a layer of complication that couldn't be ignored. What would happen if things progressed? If this undeniable chemistry led where it seemed determined to go? How far could this go before the lack of shared reality became an insurmountable problem? Something she wasn't sure she was ready for. Physically, emotionally, practically, on every level, this was uncharted territory. Kyle had never been particularly successful with women. His dating history a series of short-term relationships that fizzled out due to lack of chemistry or commitment. He certainly had never experienced this kind of immediate, powerful connection, this sense of recognition that seemed to transcend the brief time they'd known each other. Kristin Thompson, on the other hand, appeared to have the confidence and experience to navigate these waters effortlessly. But she wasn't really Kristin, was she? Not completely. Not in the ways that mattered when it came to intimacy, to vulnerability, to the raw honesty that meaningful connection required. A woman emerged from one of the stalls, giving Kristin a curious glance as she washed her hands. "You okay, honey?" she asked, her tone friendly but concerned. "You look like you're having an existential crisis in a bar bathroom." "Been there." "Well." Kristin managed a small laugh, straightening up and tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Just weighing some important life decisions." "Ah." The woman nodded sagely as she dried her hands. "The hot guy at table 12 you've been flirting with all night. That kind of life decision." Kristin blinked in surprise. "Is it that obvious?" "Sweetie, the entire bar has been watching your little mating dance for hours," the woman replied with a good-natured smirk. "You two generate enough electricity to power the place. But hey," she added with a wink as she headed for the door, "sometimes the best decisions are the ones that terrify us a little. Just my 2 cents. With that, she was gone, leaving Kristin alone again with her reflection and her thoughts. She took a deep breath, trying to center herself. The woman's casual observation had only confirmed what Kristin already knew. This thing with Daniel wasn't just in her head. It was real, palpable, obvious even to strangers. She just needed a minute. A moment to recalibrate, to think, to process the whirlwind of new sensations and possibilities that this evening had unleashed. "Options," she muttered to herself, falling back on Kyle's old habit of listing out potential courses of action when overwhelmed. 1. Go back out there. Thank him for a lovely evening and leave. Clean break. Professional distance maintained. That was the sensible choice. The rational option that would give her time to process everything that had happened without adding more complications to an already complex situation. 2. Go back out there and see where this goes. Tonight. Don't know. Right now. That option sent another flutter through her system, equal parts excitement and terror. Was she ready for that? Could she navigate that level of intimacy when she was still learning the basic landscape of her new body? Her new reality? 3. Middle ground. Continue the evening. See if this chemistry is real or just alcohol and novelty, but maintain some boundaries. That seemed like the most reasonable approach, though reasonable felt like a wildly inadequate framework for the electrical storm currently raging through her system. Then she'd go back out there and figure out what the hell she was going to do about Daniel Carter. The man who made her forget, however briefly, the strangeness of her situation. The man who looked at her like she was the most fascinating puzzle he'd ever encountered. The man whose mere presence seemed to shift the air pressure in the room, making everything more vibrant, more immediate, more alive. Get it together, Thompson, she told her reflection firmly. It's just attraction. Just chemistry. Just biology. You can handle this. With one final deep breath, she straightened her shoulders, adjusted her top, and turned toward the door. Whatever happened next, she was done hiding in the bathroom, like a teenager with a crush. Time to face Daniel Carter, and whatever this night might become. Kristin Thompson had never truly understood what it meant to have luck. Not until now. Standing in her expansive corner office, gazing out at the city skyline as the late afternoon sun bathed everything in a golden glow, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The view was spectacular, glass and steel towers reaching toward the clouds, streets bustling with activity far below, the distant shimmer of the river winding through the urban landscape. A view that represented success, achievement, status. Her view. Her success. Her life. 2 months ago, she had woken up in a new body, a new life, a new reality, and despite the initial shock, confusion, and hesitation, she was now thriving. What had begun as a bewildering transformation had evolved into something unexpected, a perfect fit. Miss Thompson. Jason's voice came through the intercom, interrupting her thoughts. The Westfield clients are here for the final walkthrough presentation. Send them in, she replied, turning from the window with a confident smile. And Jason, make sure the champagne is properly chilled for afterward. We're celebrating today. Already handled, he assured her. Though I took the liberty of ordering the Dom Perignon instead of the Veuve. I figured closing the largest residential project in the firm's history deserved an upgrade. This is why you're invaluable, Kristin laughed, straightening the lapels of her impeccably tailored blazer. She had fully embraced the sexy, intelligent, and successful woman she had become, and it was exhilarating. No more stumbling in heels or second-guessing her instincts. No more awkward moments of gender dysphoria or panicked identity crises in bathroom mirrors. Somewhere along the way, the division between Kyle then and Kristin now had blurred, then merged, then simply ceased to matter. She was just Kristin Thompson, all of her, integrated and whole. There she is, Mr. Westfield boomed as he entered her office, his wife following closely behind. The woman who turned our house into the showpiece of the neighborhood. James, Catherine. Kristin greeted them warmly, extending her hand with practiced grace. The pleasure was all mine, I assure you. Your vision gave us an exceptional foundation to build upon. Oh, please, Catherine Westfield waved dismissively, though her smile was genuine. My vision was make it pretty. You're the one who transformed a basic renovation into architectural poetry. Her career was flourishing. Her confidence was unshakable, and every day felt like she was living her best life. The Westfield project was just one of many successes in the past 2 months. 3 new corporate clients, a feature spread in Architectural Digest, and whispers of an industry award nomination, all of it flowing her way with an ease that could only be described as magical. And her magical studies, those were progressing just as impressively. Gran had proudly declared last week that Kristin was advancing faster than any witch in the family's recorded history, mastering spells and techniques that typically took years to perfect. It's the luck enhancement, Gran had explained during their weekly lesson in the attic. It's creating a positive feedback loop with your natural talents. The more you succeed, the more confident you become, which makes your magic stronger, which in turn enhances your luck even further. Is that fair? Kristin had asked, watching as the small flame she'd conjured danced across her palm without burning her skin. Fair, Gran had repeated, with a raised eyebrow. Magic isn't concerned with fairness, dear. It's concerned with balance. And you're perfectly balanced now in a way you never could have been before. The afternoon meeting with the Westfields went flawlessly, as Kristin had known it would. The clients were thrilled with the final presentation. The champagne toast was appropriately celebratory, and by the time they left, Kristin had secured a referral to 3 of their equally wealthy friends. Another triumph for the Thompson empire. Jason remarked as he collected the empty champagne flutes. At this rate, we'll need to expand to another floor by year's end. Already in negotiations for the space above us, Kristin replied with a wink. Always 3 steps ahead, Jason. Alan. That's how we stay on top. As her team dispersed, and the office quieted for the evening, Kristin returned to her desk, where her phone lit up with a new message. A familiar name appeared on the screen, sending a now familiar flutter through her chest. And then, of course, there was Daniel Carter. He had seamlessly worked his way into her daily routine, whether it was texting, calling, or challenging her in work, life, and football. What had begun as a flirtatious evening at a sports bar had evolved into something neither of them had explicitly defined, but both clearly valued. Morning coffee meetings that stretched well beyond their scheduled time. Late-night phone calls that started with business pretexts and inevitably drifted into personal territory. Weekend excursions to obscure restaurants he insisted she had to try, or galleries featuring artists she'd mentioned in passing. What exactly are we doing here? She'd asked him once, after a particularly lovely dinner that had ended with a lingering goodbye at her door, but nothing more. Getting to know each other, he'd replied, that infuriating half-smile playing at his lips. Thoroughly. Completely. Well. With appropriate attention to detail. Is that what you call it? She challenged, pulse quickening at his proximity. I call it exercising remarkable restraint, he'd admitted, his voice dropping to that lower register that never failed to send shivers down her spine. But some things are worth waiting for. Their chemistry was undeniable, the flirting relentless, and the tension between them absolutely unbearable. Every interaction was charged with an electricity that seemed to intensify rather than diminish with time. Every touch, a hand at the small of her back as he guided her through a door, fingers brushing as they reached for the same document, a brief embrace in greeting or farewell, sent sparks cascading through her system. She picked up her phone, smiling at his latest message. Fantasy season ends tonight. Last game determines our wager. Nervous yet? Thompson. Their fantasy football rivalry had been fierce throughout the season, with their teams neck and neck in the standings. The bet they'd made that first night at the bar had evolved into an ongoing source of banter and anticipation. Confident, not nervous, she typed back. Though I've been considering what I want when I win. Thinking Paris might be nice this time of year. His response came almost immediately, bold assumption. I've got plans of my own for when you lose. Dinner. Tonight, to watch the final games. My place this time. Kristin wasn't one to shy away from competition, but she had been dancing around Daniel for too long. The slow burn of their relationship had been exciting, even romantic in its way. But the restraint they'd both exercised was reaching its breaking point. Last week, during a late dinner at an intimate Italian restaurant, he'd leaned across the table and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. You are extraordinarily distracting, Kristin Thompson, he'd murmured, his eyes darkening in a way that made her breath catch. Do you have any idea what you do to me? I have some theories, she'd replied, her voice huskier than intended. Care to confirm or deny? He chuckled, the sound low and rich. All in good time. I'm a patient man when the prize is worth waiting for. But patience had its limits, and Kristin had reached hers. My place instead, she texted back now. 8 p.m. I'll provide dinner. Forward of you, Thompson, came his reply. What if I had plans? Cancel them, she responded without hesitation. Unless you're afraid to face your inevitable defeat in person. 3 dots appeared as he typed. Disappeared. Then reappeared. I'm not afraid of anything involving you. 8 p.m. It is. Should I bring anything? Kristin smiled as she typed her response. Just yourself, and perhaps a change of clothes. It might be a long night. The suggestive message hung in the air for a moment before she hit send, her pulse quickening at her own boldness. This was it. The line drawn, the intention clear. No more ambiguity, no more dancing around the inevitable. And tonight, she was done waiting. Tonight she was making him hers, no matter the outcome of their fantasy football bet. The game was merely a pretext now, a convenient framework for what they both really wanted. Kristin gathered her things, a sense of anticipation humming through her veins as she headed for the elevator. She had preparations to make, a dinner to plan, an evening to orchestrate. Heading out, Jason called from his desk. Hot date with Mr. Tall, dark and smoldering. Something like that, Kristin replied with a mysterious smile. Don't wait up. As the elevator doors closed, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished metal, confident, poised, radiating a self-assurance that was no longer an act, but simply who she was. Kristin Thompson. Witch. Business owner. Woman. Bi. And tonight, if luck was on her side, though she hardly needed it anymore, Daniel Carter's match in every way that mattered.